Continuing with the large intestine, on the right side of the body from the cecum, the large intestine is called the ascending colon because the food moves through the ascending colon in an upwards direction, so up the right side. Then the large intestine makes a bend towards the left side and travels across the abdomen right under the stomach in front of the small intestine. This portion of the large intestine is referred to as the transverse colon. The food travels through the transverse colon in the right to the left side direction. Transverse colon bends downwards and then travels down the left side of the body. This section of the large intestine is referred to as descending colon. Descending colon then bends under, makes like a little U-shaped curve under the small intestine, then another curve, kind of like forming a letter S, like this S. This portion is called the sigmoid colon of the large intestine. Finally, sigmoid colon becomes more vertical, and this part of the sigmoid colon becomes the rectum. Rectum then becomes more narrow and is called anal canal that leads to the outside via an opening called anus. So to review the entire digestive tract, the GI tract, the alimentary canal, which begins at the mouth. Then there's throat. First part of the throat is called oropharynx, then laryngopharynx, then esophagus, then the stomach, then the small intestine beginning with duodenum, jejunum, ileum, small intestine connecting to the large intestine at the cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anal canal, and anus. Now, the accessory structures of the digestive system, they are highlighted here in red, and they begin in the mouth, the oral cavity. The first accessory structure is the teeth. There's going to be upper teeth and the lower teeth. Tongue is a muscular organ that helps to move food around when chewing. It is also, of course, involved in speech. Sublingual glands, the first set of salivary glands. So there's salivary glands that produce saliva, and there's 3 sets of them. The first set is sublingual glands under the tongue, so under the front, the tip of the tongue. So if you lift the tip of your tongue, underneath it, under the mucous membranes covering the sublingual glands, that's where the first set of salivary glands are. Behind the tongue, under the tongue, submandibular glands, the second set of salivary glands, and also in the cheeks, so just to the front and inferior to the ear, under the skin and muscle of the cheeks, there are parotid salivary glands on the right side and the left side, of course. Next, accessory structures, moving down into the abdominal cavity. So under the diaphragm here, there is a large organ called liver. The liver is taking up an entire right side of the upper abdominal cavity, right under the diaphragm, right under the right lung and the heart. Gallbladder is a small pouch here highlighted in green. It's on the underside of the liver. The liver produces special digestive enzymes and also some of the waste products that it removes from the blood, and then it stores them in the gallbladder. The digestive juices from the liver and the gallbladder will then be secreted into the duodenum. And the last accessory structure of the digestive system is the pancreas. We've seen pancreas in the endocrine system. Pancreas is a gland. It can act as an endocrine gland producing hormones. It can also act as a digestive gland that produces digestive juices. Here it is visible a little bit here in yellow. It's actually covered by the stomach, so it's posterior to the stomach, located right here in the center of the body. Pancreas also secretes digestive juices that will then be secreted, moved into the duodenum of the small intestine. If we move over to the picture next to this first image that we were going over, This is an image, it's an interior view of the cadaver dissection. That means like a dead preserved person. And here we're looking at the abdominopelvic cavity that is opened up. You can see some of the skin, sorry, this is diaphragm, some of the ribs, some of the skin and muscle of the abdominal walls. And the first organ that stands out is, of course, the liver. The liver is very large. And the liver actually has 4 sections, and the 2 largest sections, the right and the left lobes of the liver, are connected together by the falciform ligament. So this is going to be the right lobe of liver, and this is going to be the left lobe of liver. At the underside of the liver, you will see the gallbladder. This is the gallbladder. And another organ that stands out really easily is this tube, the skinny tube. It's called the small intestine. It's very hard to see the structures in a cadaver because they all kind of appear brown and colorless because of the tissues are preserved in the body. They will look more red and pink because of the fresh blood. The blood turns kind of brown like this. The liver would look normally very like wine color, like a red wine color because of the blood in the liver. But here it looks brown because the blood turns kind of like brown when it gets preserved. Small intestine, this is a larger tube right here. This got to be the large intestine. It's actually a transverse colon. The stomach is peeking through a little bit, and the yellow stuff is all fat. So there's actually a lot of fat in between intestines. This fat comes from our dietary fat. It gets absorbed from the intestines. It gets stored in between the intestines. So in the person who has more belly fat, there's going to be a lot more of this abdominal intestinal fat between the intestines. Moving on to the next slide. Can zoom out a little bit now. Okay, perfect. And then accessory structures. Okay, so now moving on to the functions of the digestive system. So the digestive process is made out of 6 basic processes that are involved in the process of digestion. The first process is called ingestion. So this is basically like the functions of the digestive system. The first function of the digestive system is called ingestion, and that means taking in food by the mouth. So basically taking the food and eating it. So taking the food and putting it in our mouth is called ingestion. Secretion is the second step of the digestive process. This function of the digestive system is performed by the glands of the digestive system. For example, salivary glands, liver, and the pancreas. There's also some glands in the walls of the stomach and even on top of our tongue called lingual glands. We'll go over all of this in a little bit. So these glands produce special chemicals called digestive enzymes, which are able to take the food molecules and cut them up into smaller pieces. So that's going to be the function of digestive enzymes. The third function of the digestive system is motility or mobility. So it means moving, mixing food in a digestive tract. So mixing and propulsion of food and mixed with secretion. So motility will mix the food particles with digestive enzymes, with digestive juices, and move it forward, means propel it forward. The digestive tract does it in sort of like this wave-like motion, and that motion is called peristalsis. The next part is called digestion. Digestion is actually taking the large food particles, and this is performed by the digestive enzymes. The digestive enzymes can cut up the large food particles into the smaller food molecules that can be easily absorbed into the bloodstream, which leads us to the next function of the digestive system called absorption. So this is the process of moving smaller molecules that have been digested, such as amino acids and sugars, into the blood vessels or lymphatic vessels that surround the walls of the digestive tract. These blood vessels are going to be called capillaries, of course, because capillaries are the smallest blood vessels that are capable of absorbing various molecules. Remember the pulmonary capillaries in the lungs that absorb oxygen and carbon dioxide. So these are digestive tract capillaries that will absorb food molecules like nutrients, minerals, vitamins, water. Okay, and last but not least, whatever food was not digested or was not absorbed will get eliminated through the anus by the process of defecation, and the undigested food the unabsorbed food molecules and also some of the waste products are called feces. So feces are removed from the body. Basically, this is poop through the anus, through the butthole. Process called defecation or pooping. So to summarize, the 6 basic processes involved in digestion will be ingestion, eating food, secretion, production of digestive juices containing enzymes, motility, the movement of the food through the digestive tract and mixing of it with the digestive juices, digestion, cutting of the food into smaller particles, and absorption. Absorption will be the movement of the small food particles into the blood vessels, and of course removing or eliminating the feces from the body through the process called defecation. Okay, next slide. The next topic is called the layers of the GI tract. This is going to be figure 24.2 in your textbook. What we see in this picture is probably the section of a small intestine. The inside of the small intestine, or actually any parts of the GI tract, will be called the lumen. Lumen is that space that is going to be filled with food that is moved through the digestive tract. The lumen is lined with a tissue called mucosa. Mucosa is made of several layers. The first layer of the mucosa, the very inner layer, is the epithelial layer. It's made out of cuboidal or columnar cells, the epithelial cells. Underneath it, there's a thicker layer made out of chemicals. This connective tissue layer is called lamina propria. And then finally, the last layer of mucosa is made out of smooth muscle, and this smooth muscle is referred to as muscularis mucosa. The lamina propria contains several structures. The mucosa contains several structures. The epithelium of the mucosa contains the glands that are located deep in submucosa but open up with their ducts into the lumen. The lamina propria contains mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, so the lymphatic vessels that can absorb fats, for example, from the digestive tract, and also help with the fighting of infections. And then the muscularis mucosa is the muscular layer that will contribute to the motility, to the movement of the food through the digestive tract. The next layer, moving deeper under the mucosa, is called the submucosa. Okay, this is a tough connective layer tissue. It contains several structures. It contains the glands in submucosa that open up into the lumen of this intestine. It also contains blood vessels, arteries and veins. These arteries and veins can absorb the nutrients and also bring the oxygen and remove carbon dioxide from the muscle and living tissue of the layers of the GI tract. Here's the blood vessels, the arteries of the submucosa. They bring nutrients, they bring oxygen to the tissues of the digestive tract. And then veins, the blue ones, they carry the nutrients and the waste products away from the digestive tract. The yellow ones are nerves, and the nerves form this network right in the submucosa, and also the muscularis, the next layer, the more superficial layer of the digestive tract. These nerves form these networks, and these networks of nerves are referred to as plexuses or enteric plexuses. The plexuses in the submucosal layer are called submucosal plexuses or plexus of Meissner. These plexuses, for example, contain sensory receptors that can detect the chemicals that are located inside of the digestive tract. And the next network of the neurons, called myenteric plexuses or plexuses of Eibark, these are located in the muscular layer of muscularis, the more superficial layer of the digestive tract. And these myenteric plexuses, they stimulate the muscle of this muscularis to contract, and that's gonna be largely involved in the movement of the food through the digestive tract through a process called peristalsis. The last two layers are called muscularis. This is the muscular layer made out of two layers of muscle. The circular muscle that encircles the digestive tract organs, and the longitudinal muscle, which fibers go kind of like along the length of the digestive tract. So circular muscle deeper, and longitudinal muscle more superficial. And then finally, the last layer that is covering the outside of the intestine, the most superficial layer, is called the serosa. It is made out of areolar connective tissue, the whitish stuff, and epithelium, the pinkish stuff, that is covering the very surface of this layer. On top of the serosa, you can also find fat tissue, the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue helps all of these blood vessels and nerves to kind of like stay connected to the intestine. Serosa is the layer that you will see if you look at the intestine that is not cut, so like on the outside of the intestine. So if we go back to this cadaver picture right here, you're looking at the serosa of the intestines. Okay. The neural innervation of the gut. So what kind of nerves are present in the gut? So gut means is the digestive tract, the GI tract. First of all, we have enteric nervous system made out of submucosal plexuses in submucosa, the sensory plexuses that detect the various food molecules in the intestines or stomach, and myenteric plexuses. These are the motor plexuses, the motor nerves that control the muscle of the digestive tract involved in peristalsis. The second category of nerves are the autonomic nervous system, the fibers that extend from the brain, and these fibers can be either parasympathetic. The parasympathetic fibers, when they fire, these nerves fire, they stimulate the digestion, they stimulate the peristalsis, they stimulate these myenteric plexuses to become active. And the sympathetic fibers are the fibers that actually do not favor digestion. They slow down the peristalsis. These fibers are involved in a fight and flight response, which stimulates more of like the skeletal muscle, the heart muscle to become more active. When we get like an adrenaline rush, we're scared, we need to act fast. That in turn is going to slow down the myenteric plexus. It's going to slow down the digestion, slow down the movement of the food through digestion. So if you recall from the nervous system chapters, the parasympathetic system is the system that favors digestion. It's sort of like this, the rest and digest response, the slowdown of the body, favors sleep, favors relaxation, and sympathetic nervous system does the opposite. It's the fight and flight response that does not favor digestion. It favors the activity of the skeletal muscle and the heart. So the heart beats faster, the skeletal muscle becomes more active, so we can take action quicker, so that blood can be rushed away from the digestive system to the muscle, so they can get more blood, more nutrients, more oxygen for quicker action. And this diagram summarizes the gastrointestinal reflex pathways. These pathways regulate the GI secretions, so the secretions of the glands, and the motility in response to stimuli within the GI tract. So when the parasympathetic neurons become active, they stimulate the GI tract to secrete digestive juices. So all the GI tract glands like salivary glands, pancreas, liver will secrete digestive juices, and also the muscle of the muscularis of the digestive tract will become active and move food along and turn food around for digestion, motility within the GI tract. So here's this diagram. The round circle is the beginning, the head of the axon, the body of the neuron, and this is the axon. So the nervous action potential will move from the body to the axon terminal, so in this direction. So if you're going to track the movement of the action potentials through the neuron, they travel from the body, from the circle of the neuron through the axon to the axon terminal in this direction, but not in this direction, so only in this direction. Okay. So myenteric plexuses can stimulate motor neurons, which can control the longitudinal and circular smooth muscle layers of the muscularis. The myenteric plexus can also control the mucosal epithelium, the secretions of the glands, through submucosal plexus and the motor neuron. And the mucosal epithelium has sensory receptors that can detect various food molecules. For example, they can say, oh, there is sugar that we just ate. The sugar molecules will be detected by these sensory neurons, and the information will be sent to the brain, so to the through the ANS and CNS neurons. So that means the autonomic nervous system and central nervous system, so to the brain and the spinal cord. And this information can also be sent to the myenteric plexuses, for example, to stimulate the secretion of the glands that will help digest the carbohydrates to produce more sugars.